All right, hi everybody. I want to continue talking about tibbles and data frames in R, and more or less they are the same thing. So I want to just make sure that is the main point we take away, not that there's a big difference between tibbles and data frames. For the most part, they are 99.9% the same sort of structure. Tibbles are just kind of a modern reimagining of a data frame. Any function that I can put a data frame into, I can put a tibble into. When we're working in the tidyverse, it is preferred that we store our data as a tibble instead of a data frame. Tibbles are the fundamental object in the tidyverse. If I want to convert a data frame to a tibble, then the function to convert a data frame to a tibble is as tibble. And again, we would want to do that with an underscore. So this converts a data frame to a tibble. If I want to convert something to a data frame, it is as dot data frame dot as dot data dot frame tibble. So this is how we can convert from one type to another. But again, they are almost exactly the same type of structure. There are some subtle differences between the two, but we're in a class that is going to talk about these subtle differences. So that's what I want to discuss now is what are some of these distinctions. So one distinction between a tibble and a data frame is that when we subset a tibble, we always get a tibble back. When we subset a data frame, we don't always get a data frame back. So let's take a look at in the previous video. So up here, we created a sample data frame. So if you didn't run this, if you didn't watch this previous video, you will need to create this first data frame called data F, which is just a data frame that has two variables, numbers and letters. And we're going to create the same data set, but store it as a tibble called tibl that has the same two variables, numbers and letters. But now this one is being stored as a tibble. The first one was being stored as a data frame. And now we can highlight some of the differences between these two objects. So the data frame, if I subset it by, say, let's extract the last column letters, and let's see what this subset looks like. The subset results in a vector. Notice the output here is a vector and not a data frame. If I subset the first row of that data frame, now all of a sudden I get a data frame. Okay, so maybe this is good, maybe this is bad, but what I'm seeing here is if I subset one column, it's a vector. If I subset one row, it's a data frame. Over here, I'm going to subset one column, and the first two rows of that column, as opposed to all of the rows of that column, this is still a vector. If I take the first two rows and the first two columns, now it's a data frame. So depending on what I subset from a data frame, you can see sometimes I'm getting a one-dimensional thing, a vector. Sometimes I'm getting a two-dimensional data frame. And maybe that's not great. That might throw off my code a little bit, depending on whether I'm going to take this output and then you pipe it into input into the next thing, right? So you can imagine as we've been coding in the tidyverse, we've been taking a data set, getting some output, piping it into the next command, and so on. And if we're working with a data frame and suddenly we subset it and it gives us a vector, we're going to get an error message if we then try and pipe that into a function, which is saying, no, 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 you need to give us a data set as an input. You can't give me a vector as an input. So one nice property about tibbles is that when we subset a tibble, no matter what, we get a tibble back. So here I subset the last column of that tibble. With the data frame, we got a vector A, B, C, D. With a tibble, I get um, uh, another tibble back. Excuse me. I get a tibble that has one column and four rows. If I subset the first row, it is also a tibble. If I subset the first two rows of the last column, it's a tibble. If I subset the first two rows of the first two columns, it's a tibble. So no matter how you subset a tibble, you are always going to get a tibble back. That's really important for things to function in the tidyverse, particularly when you're piping things, because you're going to want to take the output from one command, which is going to be a subset of a tibble, and input that into the next command, which should be a tibble. So this will just help everything work very smoothly.